conversation about equality and inclusion through football and through sport. We've had some really interesting conversation already throughout the morning. We've heard from some fantastic speakers. We've also got a couple of really talented and outstanding footballers in the room as well, and at this point we'd like to introduce them to you, to bring them up and give you just some idea about their lives, what they've been doing, how they've been working to promote equality and inclusion in sport, and just the struggle that they've gone through in that, some of the challenges that they've faced and the successes that they've had as well. Female professional footballer Jinzen plays in the English Women's Premier League for Crystal Palace Ladies. She also plays for the Ugandan national team. She's actually also founded initiatives and projects to promote development back home in Uganda. She really is a very strong advocate for the women's game as well. So on the pitch and off it, she's a real role model worldwide for young girls and for young boys all over the globe. So please give a very warm welcome to Jinzen. We've got another hugely impressive footballer with us as well today. Frederick Kanoute had a standout career in France, in England and in Spain. He is a legend at Sevilla Football Club. He was also the 2007 World Footballer, African Footballer of the Year. He started and runs his own education and welfare foundation, which worked alongside UNICEF to raise millions for projects in Africa. He's a strong voice in the world of human rights, and we're looking forward to hearing his opinions today. Please give him a warm welcome, Frederick Kanoute. So comme tu veux, wherever you'd like. I think I'm supposed to be in the orange one. Am I checking? Do we have a video for this one or not? We do? Sorry. Can we play the video firstly to introduce the topic? No, we don't. No, we don't. My bad. We don't need a video for this one. Jean, we're going to start with you and just invite you to take the floor first. You're a fantastic representative of the fight for equality through football. Just talk to us about your journey in life and in football.
Yeah, good afternoon. I've dreamt of this moment for as long as I can think of. I'm incredibly honored to be here. I'm Jinzen. I'm a defender for the Uganda women's national team and Crystal Palace Ladies in England. I'm a proud member of the Common Goal organization. I'm also the CEO for the Seninde Foundation and the founder for the Seninde Women's Development Cup. I believe that football is more than just a game. It's a way we can all use to express ourselves. When I was 17, I left my country, Uganda, for the first time. I left my friends and family, and it's the first time I boarded a plane. I arrived alone in a new country, England, where I knew no one. But I always carried with me a dream that I would inspire so many other girls in my country, to give them hope and to show them that everything is possible. I managed to join London Phoenix Ladies in London, and I became the first Ugandan woman to get an international transfer clearance to play outside of the country. I went on to play for Queen's Park Rangers and currently Crystal Palace Ladies. But my journey isn't about me. My journey is to inspire so many other girls, not only in Uganda, but around the world, to show them that anything is possible and to give them hope. As a collective, there is no limitation to what we can achieve. 6 months ago, Common Goal, a movement that's led by players pledging a percentage of our salaries to football charities around the world, was started with just a single player. We are currently 45 players from 6 continents. I am very proud of being the first African player to join Common Goal. This movement has changed my life because I came alone from an African society where women are believed to be in the kitchen, women are believed to be doing other things but football. But for me, with a dream, I wanted to inspire girls to break the barriers, to show that as women, we can change the world just like anyone else. And being a part of the movement, being a part of a great movement which involves the team, to come together and instead of inspiring the world by myself, but to join a team that shares the same commitment with me has been so incredible. Gender equality is a cornerstone of Common Goal, and it's the global movement that I'm most focused on contributing towards. The movement impacts the world, but its impact is very local. And I know that one person can achieve a lot, but together, as a team, we can change the world. Thinking and wanting to do all these things we've talked about today in this conference is one thing, but we must make the sacrifices and act upon them. I started the Senine Foundation with the aim of empowering women in the communities, women and youth in the communities through education, sports, and skills training. And with this, I started the Senine Foundation. With the Senine Foundation, we started the Senine Women's Development Cup. This is a tournament for all girls in Uganda who have the passion and the desire to play football, but they usually don't get the opportunities to play. For me, I believe that football is more than just a game. It's a way we can all use to express ourselves, and every one of us deserves an equal opportunity to express ourselves. I believe that as everything that changes the world starts with you as an individual, and all of us need to have a shared commitment to end poverty and foster equality. And football has a unique power because it's the sport we all love. Football has the unique power to bring us together and change that. And together, we can ensure that not a single girl, not a single person in the world has any limitation imposed upon them as to what they can achieve. And together we can change the world. Thank you very much.
There's so much that you talk about that we want to hear more about, but we are just going to let Frederick as well say a word. People obviously know you for a really impressive football career, but not as many people know about the standout social work that you do as well. Just talk to us about that.
Good evening, morning. I don't even remember the time it is. It's afternoon now, no?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have to say that all the day I've been overwhelmed by what's happening and all the fantastic speakers, inspirational talks that we've heard. And I mean, for a footballer or an ex-footballer, we have this little shortcoming of thinking that we are important as this and that. But today I felt little like, you know, knowing all the kind of challenges all these people go through to be able to play the beautiful game, etc. And at the end of the day, I just realized that I was really lucky to have it, I mean, easier for me in my life. I think we're all the fruits of where we come from, our experiences, our education, our everything, our family, our origins, etc. And I come from a very diverse background. So for me, when we talk about inclusion, equality, etc., for me, it's something almost, I mean, normal. It's missing, but it's something that shouldn't. It's something normal because I grew up with it. I come from a family that is, we're half French, half Malian. My mom is French, my dad is Malian. Traditionally, part of my family is more Christian, the other part is more Muslim. I'm Muslim myself. And for me, it's, inclusion is just about acceptance of the differences and the diversity. So having grown up in this diversity, for me, it was always something normal that should be accepted anyway, and not something we should normally fight for. But unfortunately, the world is what it is, and we have to fight for our rights and to fight for more equality in terms of gender, race, or whatever other things. Anyway, all this to say that early in my life, I felt that I had the incredible, as I said, we are all the fruits of where we come from, our education, etc., and also our religion. And I'm a Muslim, and I'm a believer, and I believe that we are put on this earth for a purpose, to do something useful, not only for oneself, but for others. And when I was given this fantastic I would say, tribune or platform to play football and to be recognized as a footballer, I really felt that there was a vacuum I needed to fill as well. I couldn't be recognized only as a footballer, but to use this fantastic tool as a vehicle to help for development. And sorry, I'm not going to have like a talk so organized like the other guys are, because I've been overwhelmed by so many things, and I put some notes as well so I can remember everything. What I wanted to say as well is that as soon as very early in my career, I thought of a way I could give back to the community. And I think it's all about that. How we can give back to the community, or how we can use whatever we have in hands. We can be footballer, we can be actors, we can be a presenter, we can be scientists or whatever, but how can we use our skills, our fame to give back to the community? And that's what I felt very early in my career. I was around 22, 23 years old, and I remember literally I was coming back from training, and my education, again, my faith, my upbringing pushed me to not accept just being a footballer, but to be useful for the community. And I thought of many different ways I could help. The first time I went to Mali, I was 9 years old. Okay, sometimes people are a bit confused with me. As I said, I come from a diverse background. They say, for example, the driver who picked me up at the airport, he said to me, "Oh, you must be very cold because coming from Mali." Yes, no, I grew up in Lyon. It's the same weather as you know. So yeah. No, what I mean is, the first time I went to Mali, I was 9 years old. And when we talk about like inclusion, etc. For me, it was the other way around. Sometimes we talk about African coming to Europe and having to adjust, etc. For me, it was the other way. It was a funny story because I arrived there. I was Toubab. Who understands the word Toubab? Toubab means French or white in Bambara, my other like Malian language. And I arrived there because when I grew up in France, I was always a black. Okay? And I say, okay, first time I go to Mali, now I'm going to feel like them, you know? And I arrived there, they call me a white, a Toubab, etc. I say, oh, where I belong to. That's why I mean, diversity has always been part of my life, and I think it's more a wealth than something that should be treated as something negative. And how I was accepted in Mali for the first time, it was through football. The kids coming and come for me and say, oh, this little Toubab, for sure he cannot play football, let's fight with him. That's the kind of things kids like to do in Africa, to just like challenge each other in football, in fighting, etc. So the first time they came to me and they say, oh, come to play football with me, with them. So I said, oh yeah, no problem. And there was these like fancy sneakers, nice shoes, etc. And they were barefoot. I was like ashamed. I said, I cannot go like this. So I took them off. I was barefoot like them. I just did 20 meters. I came back. I couldn't bear the rocks, etc. under my feet. But anyway, I put some simple sandals and we played football. And that's the way I was accepted. They said, it's impossible. A white kid playing football this way, this is impossible. So anyway, just to start the story, I say it was through football. Even like back in Mali when I was 9 years old, I was accepted with the community, and we didn't speak the same language because my Bambara, my dad's language, I cannot speak very well, but we spoke the same language with the ball, and I was accepted. And it was the most beautiful and impactful holidays in my life. And this link I created with my dad's land was never broken because of this first holiday I spent there. And as I grew up and I went with 20 years old, I wanted to go back. As soon as I had the means to go back to Mali, I wanted to go back to Mali, and I saw a complete different reality now. When you go as a 9 years old, as a kid, everybody will tell you that Africa is the best place for kids because you just enjoy life. Obviously, there are some challenges and difficulties, but it's also a great place to be when you're a kid. But as an adult, I could realize that there was another kind of disparity and diversity we had to do something against, because it was still really enriching and beautiful, but I could see that there was many, many things and a disparity in wealth and in conditions that we had to fight for. That's when I started to breed the idea of creating my own foundation. So I created the Kanoute Foundation. I was still in England at the time, but it's really like in Spain, I would say that I started to really think through the whole process. So I wanted to help the most vulnerable children, because every time I was going back to Mali, I could see the orphan kids in the street and beggars, you know, at the crossroads, etc. So I said, we have to do something. So I decided to create this foundation, and we created Sakina Children's Village, which is a village for orphans, inclusive and holistic approach where they have like schooling, they have foster mothers taking care of them, we have like kindergarten, school, primary and secondary school, we have health center. All these facilities are also open to the local community, so it's quite inclusive again. What I wanted to say as well. So yeah, I really wanted to use football to raise awareness about that, and also about the beautiful game. I said, how can we do something? So we created, alongside with UNICEF, a match called Champions for Africa. And it has been, it has been running for 5 years, 5 consecutive years in Spain. We invited all the big stars from all over the world to play that game. We played the first edition in Seville, after we played in Bernabeu. We played in the stadium of Atlético de Madrid, in Valencia, and back in Sevilla again. And it was a great, great success. It raised big awareness about I mean, kids in Africa, orphans, and other projects for education. Education was the main aspect, as I really think that's the only way, sustainable way to operate a change in communities, to really focus on education. And we raised also not only awareness, we raised funds, and I could also create, we could also all together create this children's village called Sakina. Sorry, I'm a bit long, but yeah.
You've got lots to tell.
And after my career, I obviously what I know the most is football. So when I retired like 5 years ago, I decided to create my own consulting and management company called 12 Management. So we are like specialized in. We provide advisory services to youth program, youth training in football in Africa mainly. So we have one center in Mali, one club in Mali that we are advising, one club in Zambia as well, and one in Brazil. But the main thing is it was triggered by an unacceptable reality as well, because when I was playing, I was kind of, we say, parrain, ambassador for a school, a football academy in Mali, and I could see that some agents sometimes were taking advantage of these young, talented kids, taking them to Europe, and after in Europe, if they wouldn't make a career, they would just abandon them in the streets, etc. So it was really unacceptable. So I decided to help these kids to develop their skills in Mali, in Africa, and also to accompany them when, for the most talented of them, could have a chance to make it to Europe in a professional club. So we created this 12 management company to make sure that the training was done properly. Also, the school is very important. We've spoken, but quite little about schooling. Okay, it's not only about football. We have to make sure that football is a tool also to direct the kids to education and to more education. And also in our football schools, we focus on the education and make sure that all the kids go to school, they behave properly, they listen to the teachers, etc., so they can after train and enjoy their football. Also, we have to congratulate FIFA as well, because thanks to the compensation fees that make sure that all the training clubs in Africa get compensation and like a just and fair revenues from all these players going to Europe. So I think it's a very good, but it's not enough. I think we have to make sure that all the wealth in football is shared more appropriately and more equally in the clubs. But we can talk about that later. And yes, when we talk also about Africa and football, I think we have to make sure that we are in Africa as well treated as an equal partner, not as like the breadbasket, I would say, of the economy as it has been in the history, but it has to be an equal partner and also within football. So that's why I think an equal share of revenues has to be implemented to make sure that all these small clubs in Africa can get a fair share of the transfers when some talented kids, and we know so many talented African players play in the best clubs in Europe, but sometimes the clubs that are where they were trained, they don't have the means and the resources to develop so many players as they would like to. And also when we talk about equality, I wanted to say that I'm passing also my football coaching badges like in UK, and I've seen also in France that there is an issue in terms of equality in race and gender, because how many coaches, for example, black coaches we can see in England, not so many. In France, this is the same. And I'm passing my coaching badges in England, and I can tell you that in the classroom, where at least half of the classroom is from like Jamaican background or African background or Indian or Asian background, etc. But in terms of representation, when it comes to having those jobs, it's not there. So we have to make sure that we just don't talk the talk, but we walk the walk. And that's the thing we have to do. For example, I don't remember who said early on that saying just no to racism is not enough. Mm-hmm. We have to make the necessary measures, take the necessary measures to make sure that this applies for everybody. Okay, I was long enough, sorry. Thank you very much, thank you.
It's super interesting, thank you. It was Kevin, by the way, who said that. Jean, let's just go back to you for a minute. What progress do you think has been made in terms of the support that is given to the women's game? I'm sure that you have your own personal tale about what challenges you encountered when you tried to make your way in women's football. And where do you think there are still some serious issues in that?
Yeah, women's football is growing, is still growing worldwide, because even the world #1 countries are still kind of fighting to still have that equality. But I always say that it's always going to start with us as players to fight for this to happen. We have FIFA that's giving the grant now towards women's football, which is a very good step forward. But we are thinking that maybe we could get the federations could probably be told that it has to be equal. The men could get the same money just like the women. And with this, it's going to only make women's football flourish, because us as women, we can make a very big difference. And we have broken the barriers, so there is nothing that's going to stop us right now. And we have role models right now, because when I was growing, I didn't have anyone to look up to, but as I've grown and started playing the pro football, I've had people I've looked up to, people I've been watching on television, and now I have that dream. I'm thinking, there is no one in Uganda who has done this, so I have to. You put the responsibility in yourself, not because anybody has told you to, but because you know that everything has to start from you. That young girl out there is just looking for someone to give them the hope to be able to do something. And sometimes when you have someone you look up to and that person has done it, then maybe you could believe in yourself and know that you could also achieve these things. So with the challenges there, it's about us to start the change. It's about us coming together. It's making these conferences that are going to make a difference and to ensure that just like if I've done my role, then everyone else is going to do their role. And together, we'll end up making the change and make sure that women's football gets to the level where men's football is at, or maybe even better.
Maybe even better.
Yeah.
You're obviously hugely passionate about the women's game. I know that the Chief Women's Football Officer for FIFA is with us here today. Sarai, hello. You'll be joining us later. If you could sit down in a room with Sarai and just give her an idea of what's important to you. You talked about the policies, that getting the right policies in place is the most important thing. What would be top of your agenda other than equal pay?
Getting women in top positions, let's say in big organizations like FIFA, and also it's more so getting people on ground, because me being an African, I know that anybody could do anything in African countries, but the struggles have been more so financial, but also having the people, the representatives, especially in the women's game, to have the chance to come out and be on the table and be the voice. Because for me, I believe in doing the right thing. And I know that if you stay silent, nothing is going to change. But you have to come out and speak up so that people can hear your voice. And we need more women who can come to the table, more women who are in big positions to come out and be the voice to speak up on behalf of other girls. And that will give them opportunities.
That's obviously about women being equal partners in the game of football. You talked about Africa needing to be an equal partner in world football. What's missing for that to be the case?
I think, to be very precise, I think we have to help, and this is the perfect place to talk about it. We have to help the local leagues to develop themselves, whether it is for women or for men. We have to make sure that these kids, these young men and women have the opportunity to play football in their own country as well. Because why would we have to wait to cross the sea or take a plane to go to Europe to be able to play football or to make a living out of it? So I think the only way to really treat Africa and other continents as equal partner is to make sure that we develop locally, to have some, imagine we could bring a little bit more money to develop the local leagues so the players could not wait to go to Europe to start making a living out of football, but they could start playing in a good club, in a good and attracting championship locally with a good TV broadcast. So even the European club could have a look on these players, for example. So the best of them could go to Europe, but because they were already scouted through TV, for example, because we have already a competitive league, for example, in African countries. So it would make a big, massive change to have this better competition locally. And for those who can't play in Europe, that's not a problem. If they are good enough to play locally in the local leagues, they could still earn a small salary. I give you an example of Mali, for example. Football is still not recognized as professional. So we have a league, etc., but it's not professional. So most of the players, they can't just live out of football, for example. And so I would say that if we could develop a little bit these leagues locally, it would bring all these leagues as an equal partner. So the clubs in Europe, they wouldn't be able to, I would say, take advantage and cherry pick the best players and bringing them there. No, they would say, he's already competing in a good league, etc. So the transfer would be higher as well. So the transfer would be higher, and you will have a negotiation leverage. You would be treated as an equal partner in this case. So I think that's the only way, without talking about all the jobs that would create, like having a TV who broadcast all the games and the stadium full of people, etc. It would create also a new economy. So it's all about how redistributing the economy of football. And I think FIFA has done like a great step forward in making sure that football is practiced everywhere in the world, in Africa, etc. But I think we still have to go a long way to make sure that we are becoming more equal in chances and opportunities.
Just on another aspect of equality, when you spoke, you mentioned your frustrations with the lack of black coaches that are represented at a high level. Would you be for something like you see in the NFL in America, where you have the Rooney Rule, which dictates that black candidates have to be interviewed, at least one must be interviewed for any position?
Honestly, it's always difficult for me to say that because I come from a country, not Mali, the French one. I come from a country where, like, how do we say quota in French? Someone? Quotas, okay. That's, I speak good English then. Quotas is something like taboo. We don't talk about that because we are supposed to be all equals. We don't say, oh, no, we have to get this percentage of... This is almost shocking to talk about that in France. The problem is that in reality, we're not treated equally. So that's a problem. So I think we should start facing the reality and saying and speak out and saying, no, we're not all treated the same way. In France, we have the same problem where, like, black people, when they come for a job interview, etc., most of the time, they don't get it. I'm not saying it's impossible and just play the victim there. No, I'm just saying that it's more difficult, or where you come from, like a more deprived neighborhood, etc. Sometimes just looking at the name or your origins, you don't get the job. That's as simple as that. So we have to change that and not saying like, oh, no, we don't talk about like minorities. Same thing, we don't talk about much minorities. It doesn't exist really in the French in the French language, but it's true, it's a reality. It's a reality. There are people treated as minorities and people who get jobs more easily, etc. So there's a long way to do. And in football, this is the same thing. As I said, when I pass my coaching badges, I'm with a lot of people coming from these like cultural or religious minorities, but most of the time we never see them like coaching the big teams in the Premier League or even the second tier or the third tier. It's very rare. So there's a problem there.
I could ask questions for days, but I think we should open to the floor. Has anybody got a question? For Gino or Frederick? We have a gentleman over there at the back.
Allô, bonjour. Bonjour, je suis Lassana Kamara, je suis journaliste africain en France. Je travaille pour Africa 24. Ma question s'adresse à Frederick Omar Kanoute. Frederick, après avoir accroché les crampons, vous êtes parti à Dubaï pour installer là-bas un centre de formation, un centre d'éducation par le sport. Pourquoi vous n'êtes pas parti au Mali pour essayer d'utiliser la pratique sportive à des fins éducatives ou sociales sur le terrain? Parce qu'au Mali, sur le terrain, ils ont besoin de développement par le sport, ils ont besoin d'éducation par le sport. En plus, ils ont besoin d'exemplarité. Vous êtes un exemple vivant du football africain.
Just so that the whole room can benefit, will you answer in English?
I answer in English,
okay,
yeah. Oh wow! I have to be paid as a translator as well. I'm not gonna. No, he's saying that now after I retired, I established myself in Dubai, and I have an academy, a football academy in Dubai, promoting sports and education, etc. And he said, why I'm not doing this in Mali as well, where it's even more needed. But the problem is that my brother there maybe doesn't understand English so good. So that's exactly what I'm doing. That's why I have this a company called 12 Management, where we support and advise youth academy there and train those kids and give them opportunities. We're not focusing only on training, but also on the education, on the academic level as well, so they have all the academic baggage to go in life, and because we have to be realistic here, there's only a small percentage of these kids that can make it, who can make it as a professional footballer. So we give them all the talented kids, we give them all the opportunities so they can become professional footballers, but all those who can't, unfortunately, they can't become a professional footballer. We try to give them education and skills training and to orientate them in other fields so they can have equal opportunities in life.
Perfect. I know we're open to the floor. There's just one thing that we definitely want to touch on with Eugene, which is common goal, which I know you mentioned, but I'm not sure that everybody in the room is familiar with it. Can you just explain the concept more in full and why you're so for it, and whether you hope to see more Africans then follow suit and follow your example?
Yeah, Common Goal is a movement led by players contributing a percentage of our salaries to football charities around the world. This money empowers football-based social organizations, and anybody, we want the whole football industry to get involved too, players, teams, federations, sponsors, media companies, because the sport we love needs to define shared values and create a sustainable social impact around the world. I believe that we keep talking about equality and inclusion, and sometimes we focus about the women and the disabled and everyone else, but nobody really talks about the men. I know we all need men as well, because we talk about players, let's say like Kanoute. Sometimes these people, if they come and join the women in societies and show the young girls that they have their support. So with Common Goal, it's allowing everyone to come together. It doesn't matter who you are, as long as you're in the football industry. We can all come together because we are all here for football. So this gives us a chance. Instead of working as an individual, we just, as a team, we could change the world and we could make even a bigger impact.
Fantastic, thank you. Does anybody else have a question? Yes? Can we get a microphone over there?
Yeah, this question is... Hello. Yeah, this question is both of you. When you're breaking barrier, what's the challenges you face? When you breaking the barrier through the football, what's the challenge you face?
Personally, I would say the biggest challenge sometimes when you are a woman, you don't get as much attention except if you're a celebrity. But I know that I always encourage myself and know that you don't have to be a very big person to start something great. You can call a group of friends and start something big. And the challenges sometimes for me can be financial, because sometimes you don't have to wait for the federation to give you money. You don't have to wait for FIFA to give you money. Most so in African countries, there is problems of more problems financially, but I know that if you start, sometimes we don't need money to even do great things. You just need another person. So it takes a team, and that's what I say with Common Goal. It's coming together as a team, and we are able to impact change and break the barriers, because this time when you're with other people, it's easy to share ideas.
You're both full of fantastic ideas of how to help other people through the game. Is there a final message perhaps that you'd like to deliver to the room and also to all the people that are watching on Facebook, on YouTube, on what your hopes are for equality and inclusion through football?
Yeah, for me, I'm honored, first of all, to be here, but also I want to ask FIFA maybe to more with women's football and also football in African countries, to get more support, to get maybe some other time in a room like this, to have more Africans around, to have more people from various countries as well. And we are so happy to be here and to represent everyone else. But we are also happy to share stories. But for me, I always say, everything that I achieve is not about me. It's to inspire so many other people, to show them that today I'm the one here, tomorrow it's you who is going to be inspiring other people. So we shouldn't have any limitations imposed upon us on what we can achieve.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, the thing I would say, which is more like a general message, is just like, let's bring more purpose in everything we do. It's just that we can, as I said earlier on, we can be footballers or whatever, but let's use it as a tool, as a vehicle to help develop and bring help and hope to people who don't have the opportunities we have in life. And let's think also about legacy, because it's not for us, it's also what we're going to leave behind. I mean, of course, it would be nice to be remembered as someone who scored nice goals, etc. But I want to be remembered for something else. I don't want to be remembered only someone who just. Thank you very much. For the two people who. No, sorry. So I was joking. No, I was joking. No, it's just saying that, yeah, you want to be remembered for something that is impactful for other people's life as well, and not only for your own life. And the thing I wanted to say as well is, don't think, believe in your own worth, in your own impact, or whatever you can bring. Believe that it's good enough. Don't believe, oh no, I'm nobody, I can't bring this, or I'm going to wait for these professional players or FIFA to do something. No, I think that what have been conveyed today is that FIFA belongs to everybody. Belongs to us as well, belongs to you. And we have all together to think that we are worthy enough to make this change. So that's what I wanted to say. And on the African note, I would say, is let's try, African and other places as well, let's start to treat each other as equal partners and not someone like living out of handouts, but as equal partner, because we are equal partner. We bring something on the table, they bring something on the table, and we all together can make a change. Thank you.
Fantastic. I mean, I think on behalf of all of us here who are watching, what you have and what you are achieving in the game of football is really outstanding, but even more so, what you contribute off the pitch. So thank you very much. We loved having you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Perfect. So we have one more session. It's the final session. This one is entitled Calling for Action, Empowering Through Sports. For this session, we've got basically a collection of experts from the football industry who are going to share their experiences, share the lessons that they have learned throughout their time working in different projects. They're also going to roll that forward then into discussing opportunities for others who are here in this room to replicate the successes that they've had and create further progress within what they're working in. So this part right now really is supposed to be about practical steps. It's about the how-to fostering positive change in and through football. So I'm just going to announce everybody as usual, and then we'll get started the usual way. Our first panelist, born in the UK, to Jamaican parents, took on Italian nationality, so she really does have an awful lot to say, both professionally and personally, about inclusion. She's worked as head of social responsibility at UEFA. She is currently the head of integration at the Italian FA. Her CV is massively impressive, and I could go on for days, but please welcome Fiona May. Our next guest has a hugely important role as his home nation now prepares for the upcoming World Cup in Russia in just a few months' time. The former Russian football player and captain of the national team wants the Russia World Cup to be an example of global tolerance, he says. Let's welcome him to the stage. It's good to see you. The Anti-Discrimination Officer for the Football Union of Russia, Alexei Smertin. We also have with us for this panel a member of the Norwegian FA. For 20 years, he's been working with them in a variety of different roles. He knows football administration inside out. He's also uniquely placed to talk to us about gender equality, which is obviously something that we're hugely interested in here today. He played a key role in the equal pay agreement, which the Norwegian FA struck between the male and female national teams. He's currently the head of sponsorship sales and development at the Norwegian Football Association. Tom Fogstad. We also have a couple of FIFA panelists on this one as well. The man who runs corporate social responsibility at FIFA and the humanitarian activities of World Football's governing body. A former professional sportsman, he has extensive experience in sports at all levels as an athlete, in management, and now in administration as well. He is the head of sustainability and diversity at FIFA. Federico Adiecki. We've also got one of the most powerful people in the women's game right now, which she is looking to lead forward in new strength. FIFA's first ever Chief Women's Football Officer, Sarai Baraman. As always, come on, you're welcome. Fantastic to see you all. We do have a video for this panel, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't get that one this wrong. So if we could play the video.
Football is for me the greatest sport ever, because in nearly every situation you can play football and you can be part of a team. Football is for everyone.
We are here as a world governing body to promote diversity, but to promote it in a society where really it's a daily fight.
We know we can't change every single person's lives, but if you affect just the one or the two, that's a huge difference. It can inspire the children hearing the stories that, you know what, you can go on, you can be successful, you can achieve. It's so important.
For people also to recognize that this is a girl that is part of the project because she behaved differently, and you can see the level of self-esteem she's getting through only playing game is something that to me is thrilling.
FIFA has taken upon themselves to create a lot of awareness, to educate people, to see how we can realize that we are all created equal. We all have equal opportunity as long as we have what it takes to define ourselves and to represent the game that we all are involved into.
When you play, everything around you isn't important, because you have a certain feeling of belonging together, and this is, I think, a great power of the football. Whoever invented this game is genius.
I think we'll start with you, Fiona, and give you the floor just to talk a little bit. I said in my introduction that I couldn't go through all your roles because you've got such a list of them. Just talk to us a bit about your journey and your thoughts, what you'd like to relay on the topic of equality and inclusion in this conference.
Okay, good afternoon to everybody. I have to admit I'm the least qualified person here in this room. I was in athletics. I was an athlete. I was born in England, and I did long jump. Yeah, the ones jumping in sand pits. The only time I actually kicked the ball was when we were breaking my next door neighbour's window, and that was the last time. But my next door neighbour was really happy because he said by the time she goes up, she'll be able to, I'm sure she's going to do the Olympic Games. And 13 years later, yes. But I have been competing for England, and then by chance I got married to an Italian, and I decided to leave over to Italy. I had an argument with the British Federation, and I decided to become Italian. And on that time, I think in 1994, I kind of broke a big taboo, a big barrier in Italy, being the first black woman to compete for Italy. I have to admit I was very lucky. I was very successful, winning major medals from Worlds, Europeans to Olympic Games. I think I kind of took advantage of it as well, because I wanted to make sure that, you know, a mixed marriage in a very, very close culture in Italy, it can work. And then I retired when I was like very old, and I decided to do some work in television, and then I had my 2 daughters, and fortunately I went back into the world of sport. I was part of the executive committee representing the athletes in the Italian Olympic Committee, which was a bit of an experience because the average age in the committee was like 65 onwards. So you can imagine I was like one of the 3 first women in the 100-year history of the Italian Olympic Committee to be part of this committee. There, I kind of understood the politics, the culture differences that you had to apply, you had to kind of adhere to. And then 3 years ago, I just got pulled into the world of football, thanks to the ex-president of the Italian FA. He asked me to join them to set up a new commission of integration. Now, thanks to Kevin, he's kind of put me in confusion now by integration. So I think I'll probably go back to Italy and kind of sort that one out. I said no when he actually asked me to be part of this commission, be head of the commission. I said no because I didn't want to be used as a target or as a person who didn't understand. First of all, I'm one woman. Secondly, I'm black. And thirdly, I came from a different world of sport. So I did not want to be used as like a puppet for anybody. Thanks to my father, he kind of encouraged me, and then a lot of people from the Refugee, the Italian FA, kind of convinced me to be part of this commission. And I've been working, and I can't say that I've been successful. We're working on it. It's a very difficult country to kind of to change, because it's very, very profound. The culture is very, very difficult. Having the Pope as well residing in the country, it doesn't make it easier. I've been through it. I've been through racism, outright racism, to the very, very subtle, as the nanny of my children says, subtle as silk. You can tell. There is a big difference between racism, stupidity, ignorance, or downright racist. I see it every day. But I use my approach, which is pretty diplomatic on British terms, trying to bring through and show this message that we're all the same. I have 2 children. One of them, the oldest, becomes famous already because she's an athlete. And it shows that the younger generation are not stupid. They're very intelligent. The world is small now, thanks to the social media. But I think it's us adults need to change. But as I say, I'm the least qualified here, but I try to do my best and try to do something completely different. Also to send a message that, you know, even though I come from athletics, which is very, 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 very equal compared to football. I mean, we do, you know, there's men's and women's events. Yes, we do pole vault. Yes, we do hammer throw. We do triple jump, which women do now. So I come from a world that, you know, is very equal. I got a lot of friends all over the world, Africa, the points of like Australia, Asia, even in America and all of Europe. So for me, coming into the world of football and seeing this disparity, especially for women's football as well, it was a bit of a shocker for me, but I'm impressed, and as I say, I'm trying my best to do something in a world that I don't really know about, but I'm learning quickly.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. Tom, you've got plenty of experience in the game. You've played, you've coached, you now work in administration, and it feels like you're working in an environment which has been very different to work into what Fiona just described. Talk to us about your time in Norway.
Well, equality and especially equal payment can be a quite difficult subject to discuss in today's football. The huge wages paid to professional players, especially in the big leagues, it's certainly not making it easier. Professional football is more capitalism and less socialism. And the ones contributing most to success, they will have the highest salaries. So when female top players in many countries lately have said that enough is enough, it's not primarily a question of equal pay. It's more a question of being respected and recognized, I think, recognized as top athletes, and to be given the same opportunities to develop in their sports as the men have. It's a question of being able to be professional in the sport that you do when you compete on the highest level for your country. But it's also a question of being taken seriously as a young girl, to have good coaches when you're in your first important years, coaches that motivate you, and coaches that give you direction. Things that a young boy normally will get, especially in Europe. So I think it's fair to say that my country and Federation Norway was one of the pioneers, at least, at women's football. To recruit girls to football has been given high priority in Norway the last 20 to 30 years, I would say. It's also been a focus to give the same offer to young girls and young boys when it comes to development programs, national teams, etc. But still, until last year, we had a salary system for the national teams that gave the men more than twice the wages that the women get on our national team for doing the same job. And why did we do that? Well, I think we always thought it had to be like that, because the men's national team had more spectators, more valuable sponsorships, and of course a better TV deal. Fortunately, some of us asked ourselves some questions last summer. Is this right? Do the same economic rules necessarily apply to a federation as to a big professional club or a league when it comes to paying wages? The rule that the player generating most revenue earn more than the others? Of course not. Players do not play on our national team for a living. It's supposed to be an honor, and the payment should be fair, but not too high. After all, they were all just kids a few years ago, both the men and the women. So when we, together with the Players' Union in Norway, brought this up to a couple of the players on our national team, their instant answer was, yes, of course. The girls deserve the same payment as us. If we can contribute to that by taking a cut, that's fine. So, thank you. So the end of the story was this. From this year, our men's and women's national team earn exactly the same. The boys a little less than before, and the women quite a lot more. And honestly, I think our boys is as happy about this as our girls are. We got a lot of interest in this when we made the announcement, both from within the football family and also the national and international media. CNN even covered it, and it was not fake news. Almost all the coverage was hugely supportive, and we've seen a lot of interest in how we did it, but also what we're doing It's more than just pay. There are other elements also connected to it. Elements that can makes them more professional on a daily basis. So yeah, we're really happy that it has had this effect, and we're happy to be invited here today to speak about it in this panel. Me and my colleagues in the associations, as everyone involved, we just felt that this was the right thing to do. It was as simple as that. We have a vision which is football for all, and this agreement is part of making that happen. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Soraya, I'm sure you're interested to hear that story. Equality in the game of football is something that we've been talking about, equality through the game of football as well. It feels like the whole world is kind of looking to you to achieve that somehow. Talk to us about your role.
It feels a little like that for me sometimes too, to be honest. First of all, I just want to say to my panelist, Fiona, I completely have to disagree with you that you are the least qualified person here. Maybe you don't know football, but I'm sure everyone here will agree that you are more than qualified to speak on this topic, and I just want to make that clear. For me, I joined FIFA in December 2016, so I've been here in charge of the newly established women's football division for over a year now. And it's my third time actually speaking as a panelist at this conference. The first one that I spoke on was the first time I met Honey, and I was invited, and this was before I was in this position in FIFA. And for me, I think the greatest thing about today, personally, is that this conference reminds me of who I am and really where I've come from. And it's such a nice feeling to look out and see such a diverse to see such a diverse range of people here to talk about something that we all love and something that is so important. And I'm honored to be here again now for the third time, and in contrast to the first time I was here, a lot has changed in my life. And I mean, I started my career in football in a small island in the Pacific with 200,000 people. It's a little tiny dot on the world map. And to be sitting here in this room, to be working every day in this building, to have the responsibility of growing and developing the women's game, for me, it's incredible. It's an incredible opportunity. And I liked what Jean said about not having to be some big person to be able to make a big difference. And for me, that really is the story of my life. I mean, coming from a small country like Samoa and being on a stage like this with the responsibility that I have is incredible. And I'm nowhere near coming from this big, amazing, famous background. But I think that's good because it helps me to connect and it keeps me grounded. And when I speak to people from all the different countries that I visit, our member associations, I can relate to them on a level that it's real. And I don't feel like I'm this FIFA person, you know, who's looking down on them from this position. I feel like I'm talking to a friend and someone who's believing in the same thing as me. So it's this conference for me is something quite special. It's been part of my journey personally. And in the role that I'm in now, it's especially important to hear what people have to say. I mean, for women's football, it's a challenging environment. I've been in football for a long time now, but it wasn't until I came to FIFA that my focus has been purely on women's football. And since I've arrived in this role, I really haven't experienced to the same level the the challenges that are faced. Football for me as a woman in a male-dominated sport has always been challenging, but women's football is a different world. It's so challenging, and I'm sure that there are many faces in this room that can attest to that, and they know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm just happy to be here to listen, to understand, to hear ideas, to share. I mean, this is FIFA's way now. It's not about being locked up in this big building on the top of the hill in Switzerland. We need to listen, and for me, that's the most important thing. If we want to be effective in what we do, we have to talk to the people on the ground and hear what they have to say. And I'm happy to hear the story from both of you, actually, but I mean, I remember when I saw the news break about what happened there, and for me, on a personal level, I thought, wow, that's amazing. I mean, whether you're a football player or a journalist or an office worker, it doesn't matter what career you're in. You know, everybody should feel valued for what they do. And if you're giving your time and your passion and everything towards a job, you need to feel valued. And being remunerated in a good way, in an equal way, that's part of that as well. So for me, that was a lovely story. We still have a long way to go in terms of, you know, the other countries in the world, and every environment is different. Not every country has the same circumstance that they have in Norway, but there certainly are some lessons to be learned there, and it's something that we need to take on board and look at how we can work with our other countries to achieve a similar goal. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's really nice. Alexi, you're next. You're very known for what you achieved on the football pitch, but you've now got this unique responsibility leading up to the World Cup in Russia. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I would like to say that for me, to speak about football, it's quite an easy way. Because since I remember myself, I've been involved, deeply involved in this game. And I remember, I know that, you know, World Cup, for me, for everyone in the world, is associated with holiday. And I remember when I was 11 years old, sitting in front of TV, 1986, watching first World Cup, and staring Maradona playing. Of course, you know, I didn't even realize that, you know, we can host World Cup in 30 years. Now we are hosting. And I was an ambassador of Russian Beat, and I remember this time when we got the right to host World Cup. It was 2010. And if you ask me about the football, if you ask me what the World Cup brings to Russia, 10 years ago I would say points, medals, trophy, get through the group. Now this is something much more, much wider, not just a game, not just in 90 minutes. For me, something which can change the mind, and I'm sure the people who have never been to Russia, and when you come over to this country, to World Cup, you will change your mind definitely. And then I would like to talk about my role, because I played abroad 7 years, and then the Russian Football Union proposed me to be anti-discrimination officer. I accepted straight away. Because the game, the football, this is the game of equality. Where equality, there's definitely dialogue. And this is the game, it's a fantastic platform. We're talking about this all the time, but when you came from the field, you feel that. And you can work on it. And World Cup for us, unbelievable for children. And what we did before, just as I pointed, we integrated monitoring system in local championship, which links with FIFA. It's quite important for us because, you know, to minimize any incidents. Secondly, we launched in the university anti-discrimination course. Because with young people, it's quite easy to work. Because in this age, we can create fundamental values. It doesn't mean, you know, we don't work with old generation like mine, but it's quite difficult to change their mind. But our target, you know, to convince them not to do this. Because sometimes people, you know, go into a stadium, they don't think about their attitude, commitment. Sometimes, you know, it happens because of lack of education, because of lack of ignorance. So in my target, to explain, to convince not to do this, because, you know, if you do something on purpose with your aggressivity, this is bad. But if you do something without knowing what you can insult someone, it's different stuff, you know, you can work on it, you can explain the situation, and we do that. Because, as I said, the fundamental value for people coming over to a stadium, to support your team, not to insult the opposite side. This is slightly different, but you know, you see what I'm talking about. Also, we would like, as you know, that despite 90 minutes of fight, the football is friendship, definitely. And friendship in Russian sounds like дружба. In Russian, friendship is дружба. What we would like to do during World Cup, we would like to organize the дружба zone. It's not fun zone, it's just to clarify, it's not fun zone where the people come in to watch the football, supporting their teams. No, this is zone, it's a lifestyle zone. In each city where the people can come, all, you know, with all nationalities, all religions can come, can pray, can eat, drink, because this is lifestyle. All of us can live without football, even me and Frederick. But no one can live without food, without a pray. And we will do that, you know, in each city to communicate. We will be under one roof. You know, there's Muslims, you know, Judean, Christian, everyone, you know, which is quite important for us, and we'll do that. Thank you. So that's why, you know, for us, for Russian people, the World Cup is not just about the material legacy. I mean, the infrastructure, the stadiums, hotels, you know, we are talking about more likely about the immaterial legacy, which is quite important. As I said to you when I was young and I was watching this, and then I would like to, we need an example. The people can come, the children especially, you know, can come to a stadium to support and to see the top players at home. That's why, no, I'm not talking about the result of national team. I strongly believe in the result. I strongly believe, but it's not the most important thing if we are talking about football in global way. This is my message.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you. Federica, you've set up a variety of different initiatives and projects in your different roles, tackling things like child labour, human rights, climate protection, discrimination. You've a wealth of experience. Can you share some of that with us?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that a lot has been said. I'm the last panelist in the last panel, and a lot of personal stories were told. I'm not here to talk about myself, although I could say that actually there is a reason through sports why I'm here. If it was not for sports, I would also not be sitting in this place, and I would not be having the position that I have, because it's coming from my humble origins in Argentina. If it was not for the sport and the career I made, I would have never made it to this place. There were also many positive things explained today by different panelists, and including the president, which I actually wanted to tell about, but they were already told the good news. There were also some of the programs that we work with, that I wanted to explain to you how football is being used through our support in different parts of the world to address inequalities and promote diversity. But you also heard from them, because we cooperate very strongly for many years with Special Olympics, with the HODI, and with Soccer Without Borders, among others, and therefore those stories were told. So what is left for me to talk about now? I think that there were a couple of critical questions this morning, and I will probably have to address those. And there's a couple of elephants in the room that I hope, and I believe some and many of you want as well, to be treated and addressed, and that's what I'm going to do. So what are these elephants in the room, and what are the difficulties and the challenges that were addressed and sent as questions to FIFA this morning and the early afternoon? Well, first of all, on a couple of occasions, there was a mention of saying no to racism is not enough. Well, I could not agree more with that. That's certainly not enough. But that's certainly not what FIFA does. There is a number of policies, campaigns, activities, initiatives, regulations that are in place, and activities that we take very close to our heart, that we implement in order to address diversity and anti-discrimination in everything we do. And I will get into more of the details when I get to the point of the elephants in the room, because we need to talk about those issues in connection with the upcoming event, the FIFA World Cups, but also with the issue that was mentioned this morning about Iranian women not being allowed to enter stadiums in their country. So there's a number of activities and initiatives that are part of what we do, and definitely at FIFA we have taken this responsibility very seriously, that of addressing inequalities and making sure that the game of football, and in every activity that we are responsible for, is a game for everyone, without any sort of discrimination. And it starts with the regulations, and you might have heard of a recently developed and launched policy on human rights that FIFA has called for itself, and we through that policy we have taken an additional responsibility about protecting and promoting human rights in every activity related to our organization, not just FIFA, but also in connection with the FIFA World Cups. We have linked that responsibility to the UN Guiding Principles of Business and Human Rights to make sure that there is a clear understanding and comparison as well with international standards. And we have adopted as well a human rights policy. So we have integrated it into our statutes. So we made a statutory commitment, and we have integrated that in our through a human rights policy. We have developed as well a human rights policy, and the issues, as they were mentioned this morning, on the access of women to stadiums in Iranian football, definitely is a responsibility that FIFA has to take very seriously. And as the President mentioned through his interventions yesterday, we're showing that this is being the case. There are many examples of that as well, so it's not just written a piece of paper or a document only. Then when it comes to the fight against discrimination, it goes back to 2001, when it was the first declaration of FIFA and its member associations against discrimination, and its integration in its statutory commitment, so former Article 3, now Article 4, that prevents any sort of discrimination, from happening in football. And there are many mechanisms that we have in place in order to address problems when they arise. So when it comes to how we address these issues, well, there are definitely, there's an educational part, which we cannot deny. As Alexei was mentioning, we cannot simply act through sanctioning there where things are not happening the way we want, but we also need to work on education in order to prevent things from happening in the future. Yes, football has a strong power. Yes, football has a strong responsibility. We can reach girls and boys around the world in a manner that no other thing can do, but there are also some limitations to it, and our responsibility is definitely linked to our activities and to the game of football. And we have, in connection with the activities in Russia, established as well an educational program which goes from schools in Russia, educating about diversity and anti-discrimination, in the cooperation with the Ministry of Education and with the Tolerance Center in Russia, who is supporting us in the implementation of these lessons for school children, reaching different age groups across the country, but also training and building capacity among those people who are going to be the interface of FIFA and the FIFA World Cup with the general public. So the volunteers, our staff, stewards, security personnel, and so on. So as we speak, there are training programs which are ongoing for the trainers of those trainers in order to make sure that there is an understanding of what diversity is, what discrimination is, and what we do not want to see happening during the FIFA World Cup. So is this going to solve all the challenges that we're facing and that we have usually in our events? No, certainly not. But we have additional measures in order to also tackle possible acts of discrimination during the World Cup in the stadiums. The President mentioned this morning a mechanism which is called the Anti-Discrimination Monitoring System, which we have already implemented throughout the qualification phase for the FIFA World Cup. 871 matches were part of that system. 177 matches were considered high risk from a discriminatory point of view, and we have had in those matches anti-discrimination observers who are experts in the field of fan culture and discrimination from the participating countries in order to recognize if there are issues of discrimination, collect the necessary evidence, for this evidence to go to the disciplinary team at FIFA and for sanctions to be applied. So a combination of the two is always important, the education part but also the sanction part, so to make sure that everyone understands if something goes wrong, then there will be a punishment. And we have seen it throughout the qualifiers. We have seen as well the same system being applied at the Confederations Cup last year, and we'll have the same system in collaboration with the FAIR network at the final tournament this year in Russia. So we will have these observers and these mechanisms in place in order to check that no offensive, discriminatory messages, items, and behavior are happening from the onset, from the arrival of offense to the stadium, but also during the match and after the match. Then the President mentioned as well the three-step procedure for those acts of discrimination that may happen during the match. So we have the measures in place and necessary mechanisms, to address some issues that may arise. With that said, it is always difficult to find what are the most important to address one of the other elephants that were mentioned this morning. It's always difficult for us to choose what are the most relevant things to tackle at a World Cup. So in social issues and environmental issues related to an event like the World Cup could be hundreds of them. Every time we start the process for developing a sustainability strategy for a World Cup, we start from a number of above 100 possible issues that could be actually linked to the FIFA World Cup. It's always very difficult to go through that process. We do a materiality analysis, we follow international standards, and we define what those main issues are, the relevant issues that need to be tackled at the World Cup. And of course, with the upcoming two World Cups, the issues of diversity and anti-discrimination have come up as relevant ones, as material ones, and that's why these activities and measures that I mentioned before are part of a big package of initiatives to tackle precisely those issues and make sure that the World Cup in Russia and the future World Cup then in 2022 in Qatar are going to be inclusive, that are going to welcome everyone irrespective of their nationality, their gender, the color of the skin or their sexual orientation. And this is a commitment that FIFA has done. It's a commitment that it is supported, as you've heard this morning, from the FIFA president. I'm sure you will hear as well from our Secretary General later today in the closing remarks. It is a commitment of this organization. It is not just a statutory commitment, but it's a commitment that comes from a conviction of all of us at FIFA that this is the right thing to do. And you can expect that we will put all our efforts during the upcoming World Cups to make sure that this is the case. However, should we find some stupid people around there who are going to behave in a way that is not appropriate, then what you can be sure that we have the measures in place in order to tackle those issues, in order to sanction those who are not behaving in a way that our game deserves.
Wonderful. Thank you. Fiona, if we can just jump back to you for a moment. So you're head of integration at the Italian FA. You described it as a relatively or a very challenging environment to work in. What strategies have you found to be effective working in a challenging environment?
Well, we did like a roadshow for going around Italy with the federation, talking to youngsters from 12 to 18 who were in the football schools. That went pretty well, and but I wanted to change because obviously, you know, if we get so comfortable with our results, you know, you can't improve. And then 3 years ago, we're in the 3rd year now, we actually put up a project called Rete, which actually combats the problem of refugees. And what we did is collaborating with the government, which they have a lot of camps, refugee camps, mainly down south of Italy, but also in Sicily, but also north of Italy. And what we did was actually given the options of these unaccompanied youngsters from 16 to 19, male, to give them the possibility to play football. And what we did is the local football clubs actually gave them the kit. We actually provide that also the equipment for them to play football. And also we were working with the University of Sacro Cuore, which is up north, which they did is a two-pronged, where you say the two-way of this project. The first one is given the opportunity to play football, because obviously football is universal, and especially for these youngsters here, they all come from different countries, they're alone, they all come from different tribes, and also their culture is different as well. So it was a way of integrating them together to work as a team, and also to say that, you know, you're not alone. The second one is with the University of Sacro Cuore. What they did is a psychological test, is before, during and after the project. And what happened is, before they had the interview with them, so obviously you saw these youngsters actually, storytelling their actual lives, what happened there, their unfortunate experiences before they came over, and also the traveling to arrive in Italy. During, when they started learning Italian, or also the culture, and starting playing football, and after, when the tournament, the Rete, finished the project. Because what happened is, there was a tournament at the same time, so these football clubs actually had to compete in a tournament. So we arrived to the final, which was like last year, May, at the famous Coverciano, which is the training centre. And I've been following these men from the beginning to the end, and what really actually destroyed me, as I'm a mother, and is seeing these youngsters, these young boys. I mean, you can see their faces, you can see their eyes. They were like dead inside. They were, you know, they were lost. They went through a really hard ordeal, and you can see, you can actually feel it, the emotions which really got to me. And then seeing the 22 men who actually got into the final in Coverciano, they were just completely different. And the element that they were like measuring is, felicità is in Italian, which is a brilliant word, but happiness in English. And seeing that their happiness actually improved, it increased. It's just something very simple. That thing there, the pole, is something simple that actually creates security, happiness. And after the 3 years, we're still going on with the study, it does make a physical and also psychological improvement to these lives. So my heart is into this project, looking after these guys. And also I would like to see another project, hopefully afterwards, because we did have one success story. One boy, I can't remember his name, he actually is playing professionally in Sicily. He's a professional football player. He actually had his dream come true. And that just shows maybe just one, but it makes a big impact. And I think that's the most important thing. But hopefully we'll be going some more projects. But as I say, this year we only have about 500, and I'm just trying, hopefully we can go and increase the numbers, because there's more than 500, you know, boys, accompanied boys from 16 to 19 who wants to play football. But as I say, it's not easy to implement all these projects, especially for the refugees, because it is with the government as well, because we have to really work hand in hand and make sure that everybody's on the same page. But that's the most important project, which we've actually been told is the only project that's available in all the world. And for me, I'm pretty proud of that, but I don't want to rest my laurels. But that is one of the major projects that we're actually working on, which hopefully, I don't know, in the long term, it will make a big difference, and maybe the other countries, maybe the FAs can actually follow and do the same format, something a bit more simple. But I have to say that Rete is one of the things that I'm really proud of, and hopefully it will improve more.
Sounds great. Well done. Alexi, just kind of staying on that broader subject of integration, I'm sure that working with government associations and officials is something that you've had to do a lot of in the role that you're in right now. It feels like there's an awful lot of chatter around the World Cup, and many people in other countries outside of Russia certainly are concerned about how Russia will approach certain topics which are more controversial. Firstly, you're in Russia. You can give us a first-hand account of where you think Russia is at with certain things, and we'd like to hear what the situation is from your perspective. And can you give us any information on the questions that are being asked about will rainbow flags be allowed? Will holding hands, kissing, or public displays of affection be a problem for homosexual fans? All those questions that have a lot of people concerned and have had people concerned since the World Cup was allocated to Russia. What's your perspective on all of that?
First of all, World Cup for me is just start up in my new role. This is start up for people loving football. And then it's a good platform to do this. But I wouldn't single out anyone, because football, as I said, this is a game of equality. I'm sure that the rainbow flags won't be prohibited. This is the showing feelings like kissing, holding hands. It won't be prohibited. It's not beyond the line. So that's why I can't see any issue, to come over to Russia and to support your team. And I have a good example. Last year we had Confederation Cup. How many discrimination? How many incidents occurred? None. So this is a good indicator. So definitely World Cup will be the same. So that's why this is my opinion, and that's it. So I can't see an issue about this stuff, because the football is something. As I say to you, we are under one roof, and if we are playing football, one good example. Last year we had a friendly game. Something different, but a friendly game, Russia against Iran. And before game, we organized friendly match with Sunnis against Shiites, completely different directions in Islam. So this is a good example.
Federico, you in your position, do you have any concerns about those issues in Russia? Or do you feel that FIFA has put in enough in place to ensure that integration and the level of things are at a level that would be acceptable for everybody who's in this room?
I would not speak of concerns. Definitely, as I mentioned before, the issue of diversity and anti-discrimination was part and is part of our strategy because it came up as a material matter to be addressed. But there are there's no doubt, definitely, from the assurances that we get from the Russian authorities, from the local organizing committee, that all the measures are in place in order to make sure that the World Cup is going to be an inclusive one. We are very much interested in this being the case, and that's why we need to put in place the measures that I was referring to before in order to make sure there's an understanding, first of all, among those fans around the world who have a certain fear, and we were talking about with the LGBT sports in Russia organization before. We know that the LGBT community and LGBT organizations in different parts of the world have expressed to FIFA their concern about how is it going to be? Are we going to Russia? The same concerns they are expressing as well as the next World Cup going to Qatar. How is this going to be for us? And we have always reassured them that there is no worry that you should have in this regard when it comes to the FIFA World Cup being a place for everyone. We have discussed these topics with the Russian authorities and with the local organizing committee on various occasions in order to make sure, and there is an understanding among ourselves and with everyone responsible for staging and hosting the World Cup, that this is going to be the case. As I said before, I cannot guarantee that there's not going to be someone, a stupid person or an idiotic group of individuals during the World Cup who are not going to behave. But believe me, if something of that kind happens, then FIFA has the measures in place in order to address them. Everyone should feel comfortable at the FIFA World Cup, no matter what sexual orientation they have. And there is, of course, a matter which is in the air. As I said before, this is an elephant in the room. It was addressed this morning. I wanted as well to come back and respond to one of the questions that was asked this morning, which was actually more addressed to me than to any one of the panelists here. We have had engagements opposite to what was said this morning with the LGBT organizations, not just in Russia, but also in other parts of the world. Actually, a meeting took place today between the person responsible in my team for diversity and anti-discrimination with the LGBT sports organization in Russia, and we have had exchanges with different groups of LGBT plus in different parts of the world. So again, a reassurance that we have taken this matter seriously, an assurance that both FIFA, the local organizing committee, and the Russian authorities have committed to making this World Cup an inclusive and a welcoming one for everyone. And of course, when it comes to the details of are fans going to be able to wave a rainbow flag, there was clear answers provided both by FIFA and the local organizing committee that this was going to be the case. Are there restrictions to that? Yes, of course, there are restrictions, but restrictions are related to materials and to size, like for any other flag. And of course, of political messages that you could still put on a rainbow flag. But this is not related to the rainbow flag in itself, and this is not related to the possibility and the ability for LGBT community to be at the World Cup, to hold hands, to display affection, because this is certainly not prohibited in the Russian law, and this is certainly not prohibited at a FIFA World Cup stadium.
Wonderful, thank you. So, right, just to bring it back around to the women's game, it was wonderful to see your emotional reaction to what it means to you and the position that you're in, and how much you obviously care about the women's game and their struggles, the challenges that they have faced, and the progress that they are making, or that you are making on their behalf in some cases. What are the resources like for the women's game? Is there equality in terms of resources that are at your disposal? And is that something that is on your list that you want to get to a position of?
I think I have to answer that question in two parts. For me, at a FIFA level, absolutely, I have resources at my disposal to implement the strategy that we've put in place for women's football. I'm very, very lucky in that respect that I have support in this organisation at the highest level. Our President and our General Secretary are very, very much behind the promotion of women's football and the development of the women's game. And for me, in this new role with my new division and with my team, resource for us is not an issue. The second part to that question for me is about our member associations, and it's been talked about today. FIFA has 211 member associations all over the world. We provide the same amount of funding towards each of those federations. One of the things that we as FIFA, I believe we have a responsibility to do, is to ensure that the funding that we do provide to our member associations, a fair amount of that goes also to the development of women's football, not only to the men's game. So it's not the same situation in every country, and this is the philosophy of FIFA now. We have a new program, the FIFA Forward program, which is the funding that we give to our member associations. And the biggest thing for me, or the change from the past with the Forward program, is that we're giving our members now the autonomy to decide how they will use those funds. Our role as FIFA is to ensure, and it's in our statutes, I don't want to go on about regulations and things like that, but concrete measures have been put in place through our constitution, through the regulations of the Forward program, to ensure that fair resourcing does go to the women's game. It's a challenge, definitely, for sure. I mean, I went to Rwanda. I was very privileged to go to Rwanda, the first African country I visited. And I went to a girls' academy, and I think it took maybe 2 hours to get there. It was literally in this dusty fields, you could call it, in the middle of nowhere. Just out of nowhere, there was, I would say, 20 or 30 young girls and these women coaches with nothing. Shoes, footwear, nothing, no clothes, you know, but they were there, they were training. And I had with me a few balls. I had brought some balls. And it was so incredible to see their faces light up, just to see these new white balls compared to this old, flat, brown thing that they were playing with, you know. And it's when you see a situation like that you know there is definitely a struggle in terms of resource, not only funding but equipment. Where can they play? Where can they even play? I mean, there are some countries in the world now where women can't even have access to step on a playing field, let alone in a stadium to watch a match. So every country is a different case, and we really have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. And I mean, for me and for my team, this is something that we do day in and day out, is really look and listen and talk to our members, and we try to tailor the support that we offer and the resource that we offer to the situation in that country. Yeah.
I'm sure you look at the Norwegian model and see that as something to aspire to for federations around the world. If this panel is supposed to give people an idea of things that they can go home and they can replicate to create success, what was it, other than the Norwegian mentality, that allowed you to be successful in your project, do you think, of equal pay?
I think it's one thing which is very important is that we can talk directly with the players. I mean, in some associations, it's a lot of agents and stuff involved. The second is that we have a very good relationship with the Players' Union in Norway. That also is more difficult in other countries. And of course, I think it's fair to say that for smaller countries like us, the gap you're tightening is a little bit smaller than with the big countries, I guess. So
the gap in pay originally.
Yeah, between the men and the women.
Mm-hmm.
I hope more countries will follow. I know they've already done it in Iceland. We'll see.
We will see.
Yeah.
Let's open up to the floor. I'm sure there's a bunch of you who have questions for this panel. We have a lady over there.
Hi, I have a question for Mr. Adichie. I think Mr. Kanoute said it best when he said FIFA is for everyone. And this is my first time at the FIFA conference, and I hopefully champion everything that it's about, along with everyone else in this room. But wouldn't you agree that equal representation should be taken into account for this conference on equality and inclusion? Because how else can we include those absent voices and address needs or concerns that we may not know?
Who are you directing your question to?
Mr. Adichie.
Sorry.
In terms of equal representation at this conference, you're talking about?
Yes.
Well, I think that a lot of effort has been put in place while organizing this conference, as opposed to others I have been attending and sitting at, to make sure that there is a diverse, not only a diverse audience, but also a diverse panel and panels that are addressing the audience in terms of different types of diversity. And I think it is something that, of course, in a conference like this one, it is especially relevant. And the discussions that Hani and her team have been having while choosing the panelists, the moderator, the speakers for this conference takes that very much into consideration. If there are anything that, or recommendations that you would have in terms of making it even more diverse and equality to be lived in an even better manner, definitely happy to hear about it. The idea, I think, it is to have equal opportunities for everyone to speak, and as well a diverse panel to speak to you and present different topics, same as it was in the past, but also in the future. But happy to hear any recommendations you might have.
Possibly including more youth.
More youth?
Yes.
Good, thank you. That's a good point.
Who else has a question? Can we go to this lady over here?
Hi, I'm Nikki Simmons from the International Hockey Federation. So Fiona, I'm with you and coming from a different sport. I just had a question. We work a little bit with FIFA and sustainability and facilities-wise, but I was wondering what your thoughts on working with other sports for all the issues we have here today, because I'm here from a different sport and it's nice to hear from football. So what do you think about working with other sports on all the issues that you have? For anybody who wants to answer.
We definitely we consider ourselves that we have a leading role to play when it comes to sports. Football is the most popular game in the world. Probably this organization is the one that has the largest resources as well to make available for different issues, not just related to its own sport. And definitely we try to implement and lead by example. So we try in first place to implement things within our own organization, take responsibility for the activities that are related to our own work, but definitely have a very open position with regards to sharing knowledge, to sharing information, to sitting together with other sports federations. We do that on a regular basis, not just at the level of the national member associations of FIFA, when there is an interest and we can address as well issues related to sustainability, as you were mentioning before, through our member associations. We definitely do that, but also with other sports. We have on an ad hoc basis meetings and exchanges with different international sports federations, and we interact as well with others. I think the Secretary General of IFRC mentioned today that we are part of the center, a new center on mega sporting events and human rights, where other sports organizations are being part of it. For the time being, the bigger ones, I would say the IOC, UEFA, the Commonwealth Games, and FIFA. We're sitting in the steering board of that center, and we definitely welcome as well, and it's a recommendation that we issue to other sports to start joining those platforms, irrespective of the resources that you have, because we all have in the world of sport a responsibility to cherish human rights and make sure that we protect them when there are somehow without issues or without possible violations or risks associated with our activities. So anytime, welcome to exchange as well with you.
Can we go to the lady? I don't think we've heard from you yet, have we? The back in the middle, thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Daniela Conti from the Italian Sport for All Association. So my question is about the integration of refugees in the official football, because I understand the logic behind the regulation that puts some barriers in being membership for refugees people and for protecting the young footballer and the exploitation of young footballer, as Mr. Kanoute has underlined. But this rules is also for the amatorial league, and that means that many refugees that come in our country cannot officially play in our tournament. And I appreciate a lot the efforts that our federation is doing with Project Rete. That is very good, and there are many associations who do the same. But that means that we've got specific tournament only for refugees or for migrants, and it's important that I can play openly in all the league. especially the amatorial one. For professional, I can understand we can have to protect really the player, but maybe at an amatorial league we can do something, and I don't know if FIFA could do something to change this regulation and to permit the perfect inclusion of refugees. Thanks a lot.
Who are you directing your question at?
Everybody.
Who feels most qualified to answer that?
I guess it would
Federico's looking at you.
It would be good if one of our representatives from our team in the player status would be here to answer that question, because there are actually efforts in order to and very concrete examples on how situations have been solved for refugee players or for a young person to play in the national leagues of the country that they're hosting them, and definitely that person would be in a better position to explain what are the challenges, which I'm sure you understand, Daniela, when it comes to what are the risks of opening too much and how that system could be abused in avoid or prevent the protection of minors, but at the same time that there are specific cases, and FIFA is always willing to support when those specific cases come to our attention in order to make sure that refugees can play if they're willing to do so in those leagues.
Perfect, thank you. Just to wrap up the panel, if we could ask you all to kind of give us your final thoughts, a call to action, if you would, on what you think is important for people, the message that you would like them to take away. If we can try and be relatively brief just so we can get through, that would be great.
I think it's just taking the responsibility. If you can just do one thing, it could be big or small, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, it's where we're going, we have to go together. So I think it's just, I think all of us have to take responsibility, because I come from a different world, but we all got the same problems. And I think we just need to work together and just go forward together. Just take that responsibility, doesn't matter what it is.
Thank you. Tom?
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important that us as a governing body, like a federation, and also like UEFA and FIFA, that we should expect a lot from ourselves, and we have to be in front. We have the governing bodies have the power. I would like to kind of challenge both the UEFA and FIFA on the structure of prize money and qualification bonuses on the tournaments for women contra men. It's a huge difference, but it will be nice to see that huge gap go down a little bit. That's one to bring back to the office.
Very nice.
And also, like Champions League, huge difference between the Champions League for men and women when it comes to what the clubs get.
Can I just say, it's really wonderful to see a man who is so invested in the progress of the women's game. That's fantastic to see. It's good to have you here.
Gladly accept that challenge, and I'm happy to report actually that we've already had internal discussions on this, Fatma and myself, also with the President, and we will be making measures to close that gap. And yeah, I 100% agree with you in that respect. I think for me, my main message would be, and I bring it back again to my friend Jean, is that you really don't have to be in a big position or a big organisation or part of a big structure in order to make a difference. And every person, every individual, you can make choices every day in everything that you do that can have an impact. And some of us are in positions where we can have a bigger impact because of where we are, and we take that responsibility very seriously. But it's also about individual choice and everything we do every day, in every interaction that we have, and what we choose to engage in and what we choose not to engage in. And my takeaway message, and from what I've heard today, for me personally as well, is, you know, the place it starts is with yourself. And you really have to examine yourself and see that what you're doing is right before you start looking outward.
Okay. I would also say about the responsibility as a former player. Football is a collective game where you have a chance to hide behind your partners, but it's unfair. So that's why I'm so happy when in the Confederation Cup, one idea was implemented. So we'll do the same in World Cup. My initiative was a few months ago in Duma to implement that in local championship. I'm looking forward to do it in this way. So this is the most important because all professional sportsmen prefer actions to words, prefer actions to intentions. This is my message.
Thank you.
Two things I would like to say. The first one is clarify something or give my opinion about something that was mentioned a couple of times today about that thing, that round thing. And that's a simple thing, and it's as simple as throwing a ball and things will work. I would be cautious about just saying that. I think that that is a simple item, but using that item for to contribute to inclusion and to contribute to social development is not an easy and such a simple thing. That's why we have organizations, and we have very good examples that we can follow among our member associations, and we've heard a few of them today, but also among the non-governmental organizations that are doing an excellent work out on the ground. It's not just about throwing the ball, it's about using that power that the game generates, the power and the simplicity of the game of football, to catch the attention, in order to make sure that we get captive audience of young people that we have around and adults as well, that we can use it in the right manner. It could be used as well very badly and wrongly, and I think that we have to make very clear that those are the positive examples that we need to follow, and we need to be very careful about using the game and the ball in the positive manner. And the second element, and perhaps a take up from today as well, is the importance of stakeholder engagement. I think that sports organizations, especially the big ones, are not used to talk to anybody. And in the past, it was like that. FIFA was also one of them. We said, we are FIFA, why should we talk to NGOs, activist groups who are always criticizing us? I think that has changed, and it's an important element of the work of international sports organizations and organizations in general, to talk to its stakeholders, to understand what are the needs of those stakeholders, and to make sure that they are taken into consideration. That doesn't mean that we have to agree on everything. That doesn't mean that anything that is thrown at FIFA is the responsibility of FIFA, but it's definitely worth, and it adds a lot of value to our work and the work that we're all trying to do, and this conference is an example of it, that stakeholder engagement is an important thing to be done. Your expertise and your contributions as well are as important as the ones that the panelists and the organizations that are behind them have. So I would like as well to thank the audience from the side of FIFA for your contributions today.
Thank you very much, guys. Let's give them a big round of applause as well. Fiona, Tom, Sarai, Alexei, and Federico. Thank you, guys. We really appreciate your input. Thank you. Okay, with that, I have the pleasure of introducing one final speaker who's going to join us on stage today. After a humanitarian career with the UN that spanned 21 years, her experience and her understanding of just how to affect change and how to empower people really is absolutely invaluable. She made a massive difference for millions of people through her work with the UN. She has now stepped into a role at FIFA to help people through the beautiful game. Please welcome the first ever female FIFA Secretary General, Fatma Samora.
And good afternoon to everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear. You know, like Federico, the advantage of having to speak after the last panelist is that you can afford to be fun, because after all, football is a fun game. but you can also be very short. Because I will not tell you some things that you have not heard from the lineup of speakers since this morning, because some of you are eager to go back and turn into an implementation or a plan of action what they have heard today, but more importantly, because it's heavily raining outside. One expression I learned when I was visiting Colombia for the first time 2 years ago, when it rains heavily, they say, llueve a maridos. Literally, it means it's raining husband. I found it a bit gender biased. So it's snowing wives outside, so go and see your wife. More seriously, all of you know now that for 21 years I acted on behalf of the UN in many disaster-prone countries. And my job was to support peace and development and to foster gender equality, especially in Africa. For almost 2 years now, I have been acting on behalf of FIFA, where we promote inclusion, fairness, and diversity in football and beyond. During all these days, I have attended a number of conferences like this one. I experienced the inspiration that oozes when capable minds from different parts of the globe converge to a common objective. So I know the importance of opening the home of FIFA to people like you, and I will reiterate the last sentence of Kanoute. FIFA is for everyone. So the home of FIFA is your house. People who engage in the daily groundwork of making the world a more tolerant and loving place for every human being. This morning you have heard about how football can be used as a social power to drive change. My former UN colleague and country fellow, LIC, talked about the suffering of the Rohingyas in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. He spoke about the appalling situation of the internally displaced people in Yemen, in Somalia, in the refugees camp in Jordan. But despite the human tragedy, if there is one thing that bonds these people, is sport, and football in particular. I worked in Liberia in '96. For those of you who are familiar with the history of this country, who's now, I hope, on a better situation than before, because they have a president who was the only African, how you call it, football legend, now being president, George Weah, was in war for about 15 years. The only moment when people will stop fighting and receiving orders from the warlords were when it was raining or when they were playing football. I had another anecdote, it's about Rwanda. You all know what happened there in '94, '95. And the only moment also where people having in common the same language, same religion, but who killed each other massively, accepted to restore peace and to talk about the future was around a pitch. Just to tell you how important football has been during all my life and has served me also to build bridges between societies and vulnerable communities. When I joined FIFA, I would often heard one sentence. In fact, two. The first one, mostly coming from my UN colleagues, were, what the hell are you doing in FIFA? I remember my mother, when I told her that I was looking into the possibility of joining this organization, telling me, I don't want you to go to this middle-aged, white-dominated organization. They are all corrupt. I want you to replace Ban Ki-moon, nothing else. Unfortunately, she's not here today because she passed away last December. But I wanted to tell her where she is now that FIFA is no longer an old white man-dominated organization. We have 52 different nationalities. We are 603 people, out of whom 45% are women. And our president is as young as 48. So give me another 2 years, and then maybe there will be more youth in this room. And probably because of my background in humanitarian work, many people felt also to remind me about one thing. It is not football's duty to save the whole world. And indeed, it's not. Football alone cannot solve all the problems in the world. It would be pompous of FIFA, not to mention arrogant, to think otherwise. But on the other hand, you cannot simply ignore the power of a sport that sparked the passion of so many millions around the globe. People of all backgrounds, ethnicities, and beliefs. It would be irresponsible to overlook this power. It is only human of us to consider ways of putting football at the service of a greater good. And I cannot think of a greater good than pursuing equality, than striving for people to be properly valued regardless of where they come from, what is their sexual orientation or color of their skin. FIFA represents the most widely loved sport on this planet, a sport whose flagship claims is to be universal. If we were to fail to make a stand for inclusion, we will not simply be failing our sport, we will be failing humanity. And make no mistake, this will not happen, and not under my watch. Over the course of the day, you have heard details about several of FIFA concept initiatives. I'm not going to repeat what the President explained this morning that was complemented by Federico. We set up an independent human rights advisory board composed of international experts from the United Nations, trade union, civil society, and business partners. In fact, we put human rights as a central element of our agenda and of the FIFA World Cup, be it in Russia, Qatar, or in the bidding process for the 2026 edition. Ensuring that a FIFA World Cup is free of discrimination and open to all is a priority. It's not a dream for this administration. As Federico explained, specialized monitors have been deployed to observe the matches and to ensure that we minimize the level of disruption when it comes to having discriminatory behavior on the pitch, but also out of the pitch. And referees, as you know, are entitled now to adopt these three-step procedures. And we have also trained our own personnel on the matter of discrimination and in its many facets. FIFA employees, the local organizing committee employees, security stewards, food and beverage contractors, etc., etc. Are these solutions? I would respond, absolutely not. As someone who has had to face a fair share of unequal treatment throughout my life, I know that very well. In fact, I know it very well that we should not even be having this discussion. That embracing humankind for how diverse it should be a matter of basic human decency. However, are these victories, small victories, step forward in a long, long journey? That they are. This FIFA Conference for Equality and Inclusion is not only about women. It's not only also about a human treatment of refugees or internally displaced people or vulnerable communities. It's not about race or sexuality. It's about restoring hope. Hope that one day what we are all saying here will be taken for granted. Hope that one day we will not have to raise our voices to defend a fundamental liberty, one that should never have been attacked in the first place. But for as long as injustice remains, you can count on us to keep raising our voices and to keep passing it on. Thank you, everyone, for having come all the way to FIFA to listen to more expert people to exchange your experience. I wish you a safe return back home, and especially to welcome you again next year to discuss in depth what we have achieved over the past 12 months. Thank you so much.
Well, Fatma has done a fantastic job of closing the conference. That does bring us to the end of the day. I really do hope that it's been a valuable experience for you, just sharing the thoughts and ideas of all these wonderful people that we've heard from today. Thank you to those of you guys as well who joined us online on the Facebook live stream, on YouTube. It's been wonderful if you've been able to watch over what's been talked about here and hopefully take some of that experience for yourself as well. To those of you in the room, thank you very much for your company. It's been wonderful to be with you throughout the day. There are drinks and food, I believe, going to be served downstairs, so please do stay, enjoy the food, enjoy the drinks, and just enjoy networking and mixing with one another before you all go off home. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of the day.